So I'm looking at the leaders of the effort that's supposed to be stopping drugs in America. I just got off the phone the other day with a father from my home state of Tennessee who found his son dead on Thanksgiving morning, dead from fentanyl. Each of the three of you have been charged with addressing this scourge, yet it continues to run rampant. The number one killer of Americans today, of young people between the ages of 18 and 45, is drug overdose. Most of it fentanyl, coming across our southern border, being supplied by China, just as Secretary Robinson mentioned. China's the principal source of these drug precursors that are going to the Mexican cartels. Dr. Gupta, you've mentioned this. In August, you stated that fentanyl will continue to flood the world unless China stops drug trafficking. Indeed, I want to use your quote. China's decision to refuse cooperation in this issue will result in more American deaths. So, Dr. Gupta, has China done enough to stop the transport of fentanyl precursors from China to Mexico? I'd appreciate a yes or no answer.
No, Senator.
I agree. Is pressing the Chinese Communist Party to stop fentanyl precursors coming from China a top administration priority? Again, I'd appreciate a yes or no answer.
Senator, it is.
I'm glad to hear that. Dr. Gupta, the White House issued a press release last week on its proposals for cracking down on fentanyl trafficking. Yet, not once in the entire press release was China mentioned. Moreover, during the State of the Union, not once did the President call out China's role in this fentanyl crisis. If getting China to stop fentanyl production that's killing hundreds of Americans daily is a top priority, then why didn't President Biden mention it at the State of the Union?
Senator, if I can elaborate, this is one of the top priority issues, both for the President, for myself. I've had a conversation with Secretary Blinken, for whom it also remains a top issue as well.
Well, I certainly don't see that from Secretary Blinken either. Less than a week before his planned trip to China, before the Secretary's planned trip to China, the Treasury Department rolled out sanctions against Mexican drug cartels that are involved in the exportation of fentanyl and precursors that end up in the United States. The Treasury Department, in this press release, explicitly called out China's role in supplying these precursors to Mexican drug lords. However, the Secretary of State's parallel press statement omitted any mention of China. Assistant Secretary Robinson, for the record, was there any internal disagreement or debate between your bureau, the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, which you lead, and the Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs on whether or not to omit any mention of China in Secretary Blinken's press statement? Please give me a yes or no answer.
No.
No debate, no discussion.
Oh, there was debate. There was discussion, but at the end of the day, we agreed on the statement that the Secretary...
With no mention of China in it. While the Biden administration increasingly censors itself on China's role in America's fentanyl crisis, China's ambassador to the United States, Qin Gong, who is now the foreign minister, falsely claimed last year that China has done everything possible on our end, quote, using his words, out of goodwill, to help the United States address this problem. How can the administration continue to pursue meetings with China to develop a so-called floor in the relationship when China so obviously lies about its involvement and refuses to stop the flow of fentanyl? In addition to securing and defending our open southern border, we've got to hold the CCP accountable. Does anybody have an answer about why we continue to do this?
Well, I would say that we are working aggressively to engage China on this issue at a number of levels. But as I mentioned earlier, the relationship with China is complicated. We have a number of issues to discuss with them, and there is no doubt...
Well, I will interrupt you because the number one issue we've just established, a top priority for this administration, is dealing with the poisoning of our kids.
Absolutely.
Yet we're not going to call them out. We're not going to mention it. That seems to be the priority. Treasury will, but the State Department will not.
We are going to work as hard as we can to engage with the PRC multilaterally and bilaterally, if possible, to address this issue.
If the State Department and the White House will not call out this problem, we will never address it. We will never address it.
Senator, I have called them out publicly after Speaker Pelosi's visit when they stopped cooperation. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to pressure them, including using sanction authority.
I encourage you to do that, but I encourage you to get the Commander-in-Chief to call it out. And I encourage our top diplomat to call it out, too. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter all these documents for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.